The restaurant buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft murmur of conversations. To everyone else, it was an ordinary Friday evening, the kind of night where strangers met for dates and lovers whispered across candlelight. But for Ella, the world moved in silence. She sat near the window, hands resting on her lap, her eyes darting nervously between the menu and the man across from her. His lips moved, fast, impatient, careless, but she couldn't read his words. She smiled politely, pretending she understood. The man's name was Jason, someone she'd met through an online app for singles. They'd chatted through messages, and when she told him she was deaf, he'd replied with a cheerful, "That's cool. I've always wanted to learn sign language." But sitting across from him now, Ella could tell he hadn't meant it. His phone was in his hand more than his eyes were on her. Every few seconds he'd glance up, grin awkwardly, then return to his screen. She tried to catch his attention with a small wave, but he frowned, irritated, like she'd interrupted something important. Her chest tightened. She had spent 2 hours getting ready, practicing smiles in the mirror, rehearsing sentences she might type if she couldn't lip read. But now, all that hope felt like a cruel joke. At the next table, a man watched quietly. Liam. His sleeves were rolled up, a child's crayon drawing peeking from the corner of his worn leather wallet beside his plate. He wasn't eavesdropping exactly, but something about the girl caught his attention. The way she kept glancing down, the way she blinked hard every time her date scrolled through his phone. It stirred something in him. He knew that look. He'd seen it on his own daughter's face after her mother left. Jason suddenly stood up. His chair screeched against the floor, making people turn. Ella looked up, startled. He gestured vaguely at his watch, mouthing words she barely caught. "Sorry, this isn't working." And then he left. Just like that. No explanation, no goodbye. Only silence, thick and humiliating, filled the space where he'd been. Ella sat frozen, blinking at the empty chair. Her face burned. The waiter approached hesitantly, pity flickering in his eyes. "Would you like the bill?" he mouthed slowly. She nodded, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Her throat ached, even though she hadn't spoken a word. That's when a gentle tap came on her table. She looked up. The man from the next table, Liam, stood there with kind, searching eyes. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he raised his hands and signed carefully. "You deserve better." Her breath caught. For a second, she thought she'd imagined it. But his signs were clear, steady, real. Someone spoke her language, in this noisy world that rarely bothered to listen. Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at him. He smiled softly, his hands trembling slightly from nerves. Then he pointed to the empty seat across from her, silently asking, "May I?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed, a message from Jason. Her trembling fingers opened it. 4 words appeared on the screen. "You're sweet but difficult." Her heart broke again, and yet something inside her shifted. Because when she lifted her gaze, Liam was still standing there, waiting. And in that waiting, that quiet courage, something began to change. Ella didn't answer right away. Her fingers trembled as she slid her phone aside, ashamed of how much one careless message could hurt. The world around her blurred, people laughing, waiters rushing, music humming. But she only saw the man standing across from her, Liam. His eyes were calm, unhurried, the kind that didn't look through her but at her. She gave a hesitant nod. He smiled, pulling out the chair. As he sat, he signed slowly, carefully, a little clumsy but sincere. "I only know a few signs. My daughter taught me." Ella's brows lifted in surprise. She signed back, "Your daughter?" He nodded. "She's 8. Likes to teach me new things every week." Sign language was her obsession last month. A smile tugged at Ella's lips. She hadn't smiled like that in weeks. Maybe months. Liam noticed, and his own grin deepened. Warm, unpolished, genuine. They began talking, half in gestures, half in scribbled notes on napkins. He told her his daughter's name was Mia, that she loved dinosaurs and pancakes, that he was a single dad who hadn't gone on a date in years because raising a kid feels like 2 full-time jobs. She told him she worked as a librarian at the city's community center, where silence wasn't loneliness, it was peace. As she shared, her hands flowed like poetry. Liam listened, truly listened, with his eyes, his heart. Every motion of her fingers painted emotion in the air. It mesmerized him. For a while, the world shrank to just the two of them, a man and a woman speaking without sound, yet understanding completely. But behind Ella's smile lived a storm. When she was 16, meningitis stole her hearing overnight. The silence that followed had crushed her. Friends drifted away. Her parents, well-meaning but helpless, had never learned to sign fluently. "You'll adapt," they'd said. But she never quite did. Dates, jobs, friendships. Everything seemed to come with invisible walls she couldn't climb. She had taught herself to read lips, to fake confidence, to smile even when the world forgot she existed. That's why Jason's rejection had hurt more than it should have. It wasn't just about him. It was about every moment she'd been made to feel like less. Now, sitting across from a man who actually tried, she felt the smallest spark of something unfamiliar. Hope. Liam noticed her drifting gaze and gently tapped the table. He signed, "People who can't see the real you don't deserve to be near you." She blinked rapidly, her throat tightening. No one had ever said that to her. Not like this. As they finished dinner, the lights dimmed slightly, the restaurant closing soon. Liam signed one more thing before standing up. "I'll be here again tomorrow." Same table. He smiled, paid for her meal quietly, and left before she could protest. Ella sat there long after he was gone, her fingers tracing the air like she was still speaking to him. Something about his words lingered, like an echo that refused to fade. When she finally stepped out into the cool night air, she felt lighter, but scared, because for the first time in years, someone had seen her. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Ella's apartment window, spilling across the small table where her sketchbook lay open. She wasn't an artist by profession, but she often drew lines and shapes that felt like words she couldn't say. That morning, her pencil moved on its own. Without realizing she was sketching his face, Liam's soft smile, the kindness in his eyes. She stopped midway, embarrassed at herself, and shut the book with a quiet laugh. He probably won't even come back, she thought, shaking her head. He was just being kind. But by evening, as she stood outside the restaurant again, her heart betrayed her logic. She tried to convince herself she was only there because she liked their soup. Yet when she stepped inside and saw him, sitting at the same table, a small smile breaking across his face the moment he saw her, the truth hit her like a wave. He'd kept his word. Liam stood, pulling out a chair for her just as before. His daughter wasn't with him, but there was a bright pink bracelet around his wrist, one of those handmade ones kids tie for their parents. Ella pointed to it with a questioning smile. He signed, "Mia made it," said it's my good luck charm. They laughed, or rather she laughed, and he smiled in the way people do when sound doesn't matter. The warmth between them grew quickly, like it had been waiting all along. As the evening deepened, Ella found herself opening up, about her struggles finding a job that understood her needs, about how she sometimes felt like she lived in two worlds, one of sound she could no longer reach, and one of silence no one else cared to enter. Liam listened to every gesture, every flick of her hand, every emotion behind her eyes. Then for the first time, she asked about his story. Liam's hands paused mid-sign. His expression dimmed. He took a deep breath before signing slowly. "My wife left 3 years ago. Said she wasn't ready to be a mother. I raised Mia alone." Ella's expression softened, her hand instinctively reaching across the table. "That must have been hard," she signed gently. "It was," he admitted. "But Mia kept me going. She's the reason I learned to love small moments again." Something passed between them, a fragile connection built from shared brokenness. Neither of them needed to fill the silence. It spoke for them. When the waiter arrived, Liam signed his order clumsily. It made Ella giggle, and he grinned, proud of his effort. Other diners turned to watch, some smiling, others whispering. One man muttered, "Cute couple." The words weren't meant for Ella's ears, but she caught them from his lips, and for once the label didn't sting. It felt right. Later that night, as they stepped outside, Liam offered her a ride home. She declined, writing on her notepad, "I like walking. Helps me think." He nodded, respecting that. But as she walked away under the streetlights, a cold wind brushed past, and a thought chilled her heart. Good things never last. She glanced back once. Liam was still there, watching her leave, the faintest worry shadowing his face, as if he too knew something was about to change. For the next few weeks, their meetings became a quiet rhythm, unspoken yet certain, like two hearts learning a new language together. Every evening, Ella and Liam found themselves back at that same corner table. Sometimes they shared coffee. Other nights, just conversation. There were no grand gestures, no promises, only the comfort of understanding, of not having to explain. Liam's signing improved slowly but steadily. He'd practiced with Mia, who thought it was super cool that her dad was learning a secret hand code. One night, he brought Mia along, and Ella's world bloomed a little wider. Mia was sunshine bottled into a child, her laughter bright, her eyes curious. The little girl immediately signed to Ella, her small hands fumbling with enthusiasm. "Hi, I'm Mia. You're the lady Daddy talks about." Ella's heart melted. She signed back playfully. "He talks about me?" Mia nodded with pride. "All the time. He says you make him smile again." Liam's face flushed, and he ruffled his daughter's hair in mock protest. "Traitor," he mouthed, and Ella laughed, the kind of laugh that reached her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel broken. She felt seen, even whole. Over time, Ella began visiting Liam and Mia's small apartment, a cozy space filled with drawings, plants, and love. She read bedtime stories to Mia in sign language while Liam watched from the doorway, arms crossed. An expression caught between gratitude and disbelief. Yet in the stillness of night, when she returned home, Ella's thoughts darkened. She would sit in bed and replay the evening, Mia's laughter, Liam's smile, and then a whisper of fear would creep in. Don't get used to it. The truth was, Ella still carried the scars of every rejection. The world had taught her that people eventually tired of trying, that patience had limits. And though Liam was different, she couldn't silence that small, cruel voice inside her that said, "You're too much work." A few days later, that voice got louder. She was shelving books at the library when a group of coworkers began chatting nearby. Their words drifted to her through half-readable lips. "She's sweet," one woman said, "but it must be hard talking to her." Another added, "Yeah, I could never date someone like that." Too complicated. Ella froze, her hands trembling over a stack of books. The words cut deeper than they should have. By the time she got home, her chest felt tight, as if the world was reminding her that love, for her, would always come with conditions. That evening, when Liam called, using video so he could sign, she didn't answer. He texted, "Everything okay?" Then again, "We missed you at dinner." She stared at the messages until the screen dimmed. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered into the quiet room, "You'll leave too, once you realize I'm not easy to love." Outside, thunder rumbled. Rain began to fall, tapping gently on the window like a rhythm she couldn't hear. But somehow, she felt it deep inside her, and somewhere across the city. Liam sat awake beside a sleeping Mia, staring at his phone, wondering why the silence suddenly felt so heavy. For 2 days, Liam heard nothing. No messages, no replies, just the same quiet emptiness each time he checked his phone. At first, he told himself maybe Ella was busy. But by the third night, worry began to gnaw at him. Ella wasn't the type to vanish. There was something fragile about her, something that made him want to protect her from a world that often looked the other way. He finally decided to visit the library where she worked. The building was nearly empty when he arrived, the air heavy with the faint scent of paper and dust. He saw her at the far end of an aisle, carefully stacking books. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. Surprise, then guilt, then something unreadable. Liam didn't speak. He simply lifted his hands and signed softly. "You disappeared." Ella hesitated. Her eyes darted away, her hands stilling midair. Then she signed back, slower. "I needed space." He frowned, stepping closer. "Did I do something wrong?" Her lips trembled before she replied, "No, you did everything right." "That's the problem." Confusion crossed his face. She took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she continued. "People always say nice things at first. They try. Then they realize it's hard, having to repeat words, write notes, learn signs. They get tired, and I end up alone again." Liam's chest tightened. He shook his head firmly. "I'm not them, but you will be." She signed back, tears gathering in her eyes. "Everyone leaves eventually." The rawness in her expression shattered him. He wanted to speak, to find words big enough to hold her pain, but none existed. So he simply reached out and took her hand, gently, carefully, like something sacred. "I don't care how hard it is," he signed slowly. "I care about you." For a moment she stared at him, disbelieving, searching. Then without warning, she pulled away and hurried out of the library, leaving him standing in the quiet aisle, surrounded by shelves that held 1,000 stories, none as painful as the one unfolding between them. That night, Ella sat by her window, watching rain beat against the glass. Her phone buzzed again. "You don't have to be alone. Let me in." She turned it face down, but the words lingered in her chest like an ache that refused to fade. The next morning, a knock echoed against her door. When she opened it, Mia stood there, tiny raincoat dripping, clutching a plastic dinosaur in one hand. Behind her was Liam, looking tired but determined. Mia grinned up at her. "Daddy said you're sad." "I came to make it better." Ella knelt, tears welling as the little girl hugged her. And in that small, unexpected embrace, the silence broke, not with sound, but with warmth. When she looked up, Liam was there, eyes soft but firm, signing a single word: "Please." Her heart fluttered painfully. For the first time, she didn't know whether to run or to finally let herself stay. Ella stood frozen at the doorway, staring at the little girl in her arms. Mia's innocent smile was the kind that disarmed fear and reason alike. Liam stood behind her, rain dripping from his jacket, eyes tired yet filled with a quiet resolve. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Ella stepped aside, her trembling hands motioning for them to come in. The apartment was small but warm, books stacked in corners, half-finished sketches on the table, a faint smell of tea lingering in the air. Mia ran straight to the couch, placing her dinosaur proudly on the cushion. "This is Rexy," she said, though Ella couldn't hear it. The child's enthusiasm said enough. Liam smiled faintly, wiping his hands on his jeans as Ella set out 2 mugs of tea. When their eyes met again, silence pressed between them, not the comfortable kind they used to share, but the heavy, uncertain kind that begged to be broken. Liam began signing slowly. "I didn't mean to intrude, but when you stopped answering, I couldn't just wait." Ella looked down, signing back, "You shouldn't have come." He hesitated, then took a breath. "Maybe not, but I did, not because I care. You think being with you is a burden, but it's not. It's the first time in years I felt something real." Her fingers faltered mid-sign. The words hit her like a shock. Too kind, too much. "Don't say that," she signed, her hands trembling. "You don't understand what it's like. Every day is a fight, to be heard, to not be pitied. I can't drag you into that." Liam shook his head. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm walking in because I want to." Her eyes filled. "You'll get tired," she whispered, the words escaping her lips in a voice rough from disuse. He froze. It was the first time he'd ever heard her speak. The sound was soft, shaky, like a melody finding its way back into the world. And it broke him. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Then I'll rest beside you, but I won't leave." Tears spilled down her cheeks. For a moment, she wanted to believe him, wanted to surrender to the warmth that his presence brought. But fear clawed at her heart, whispering that nothing good ever stayed. Before she could respond, Mia tugged at her sleeve and signed clumsily, "You make Daddy smile." That simple sentence undid her completely. She knelt, hugging Mia tightly as her tears fell freely. Liam watched, his own throat tightening. In that moment, he realized something. She wasn't pushing him away because she didn't care. She was pushing him away because she did. When Ella finally stood, her eyes were red but steady. She signed softly, "I need time, please." He nodded. "I'll wait," he said aloud, letting her read his lips. "As long as it takes." As they left, the door closed behind them with a quiet click, final yet full of possibility. Ella pressed her forehead to the wood, her breath shaking. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a question waiting to be answered. Winter came softly that year, the kind that painted the windows with silver frost and made the city move a little slower. For Ella, the passing days felt quieter than ever, yet not in the same lonely way they once had. There was a new kind of silence now, patient, thoughtful, alive. After Liam and Mia left that night, she'd spent days thinking about them. Every memory, their dinners, their laughter, Mia's tiny hands trying to spell her name, replayed in her mind like a movie she couldn't pause. But underneath the warmth lived fear. Could she really open her heart again? Could she trust that someone would stay even when words failed her? One morning, she found her answer in the unlikeliest place. She was at the library when a small envelope appeared at her desk. No name, no handwriting she recognized. Inside was a crayon drawing, stick figures, a man, a girl, and a woman with long brown hair. Above them, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Our friend Ella." Her heart squeezed. She turned the paper over. There, scrawled in careful handwriting, were the words she'd longed and feared to see. "Mia says you belong in our story." Liam, tears blurred her vision. She didn't think. She just ran. Out of the library, through the snow-dusted streets, her breath visible in the cold air. Her boots crunched against the pavement as she hurried toward the small cafe where everything had begun. When she burst through the door, she saw him immediately, sitting at their old table, a mug of coffee in one hand, eyes lifting in surprise as he saw her. He stood, almost knocking over his chair, as she walked toward him. For a long moment, they just stared. No words, no signs, only the hum of the world around them. Then Ella lifted her trembling hands and began to sign. "I was scared. I thought I'd lose you if you saw how broken I was." Liam stepped closer, his breath visible in the chill air between them. "You're not broken," he signed back. "You're brave." Her eyes filled with tears. "You really think so?" He nodded, then smiled softly. "I don't just think it. I know it." She let out a trembling laugh, half a sob, half a sigh, before signing one last word. "Stay." He reached out, cupping her face gently, and whispered, "Always." In that moment, the world melted away. The noise, the stares, the ache of all those years she'd spent believing she wasn't enough. For the first time, silence wasn't empty. It was full. Outside, snow began to fall, drifting past the cafe windows like tiny blessings. Mia came running in moments later, her laughter bright and wild, waving her drawing proudly. Liam laughed, pulling both of them close. Ella looked at them, this small, unexpected family, and smiled through her tears. She couldn't hear their laughter, but she didn't need to. She could feel it, sometimes. The loudest love stories are written without a single sound. And as they stood together, father, daughter, and the girl who finally believed she was enough, Ella realized something profound. Silence had never been her weakness. It was her language of love.